Hello there. Violence on the pitch could now result not just in a red card, but a court appearance and a punitive fine after a landmark ruling involving a Cornish rugby club. They've been left with a bill of almost £40,000 for damages after one of their team hit another player during a match.
In the judgment, which will have implications for all clubs, whatever the sport, the Court of Appeal said Redruth Rugby Club should be held liable for the action of Richard Carroll during a game 3 years ago.
Richard Carroll, seen here scoring a try for Cornwall, is well known in Cornish rugby circles, and after today's appeal court ruling, he's now set to be well known throughout the game. His punch during a match in October 2005 left the Halifax prop, Andrew Gravel, with a fractured eye socket, and that incident has left Redruth Rugby Club with a bill for almost £40,000 after the nation's top civil judge ruled it fully liable.
Financially, fortunately, we're insured against the incident, but I think the repercussions for sport in general, and particularly rugby, could be far-reaching. But there are incidents where people do sort of overstep the line slightly, and even on the highest stage, incidents similar to this occur. But I think now the floodgates could open, and we could see any number of cases being brought against individual players.
Andrew Gravel's injury forced him out of the game for 6 months. Richard Carroll was given a yellow card by the referee at the time, but an RFU meeting later ruled that it should have been a red card and a sending off. Carroll was then suspended for 8 weeks.
It's a very disappointing decision. What's more worrying, I think, is the implications that it's going to have, not just for ourselves, but for other rugby clubs and possibly other sports as well.
In 1992, a Torquay United footballer pressed charges against another professional. John Uzel needed reconstruction on an eye socket to save his sight after this incident. He gave evidence that Gary Blissett of Brentford ended his career and almost blinded him by reckless use of the elbow. But the jury watched a video recording and acquitted Blissett of the charge of grievous bodily harm. Richard Carroll no longer plays for Redruth. He spent last season at Mounts Bay. Jeff Welsh for West Country News.
Joining us from London is litigation expert Peter Coyle. This sounds like the beginning of a minefield for lots of sporting clubs. Can, frankly, any club now be sued by opposing players if they are injured in this manner?
They can if they employ their players. That doesn't matter whether it's full-time or part-time, but where there's an employment contract in place, then yes, the answer is that a rugby club can be found responsible for the actions of its players.
What about amateur sporting clubs, and not just rugby clubs? I understood this applied to any sort of a sporting club.
Any sporting clubs at all, amateur, professional, they're all bound by the same judgment that was handed down by the Court of Appeal this morning, yes.
Right. I mean, the unfair thing seems to me that Redruth have told their players what the rules are. They've told them to play within the rules. Why are they responsible if their players then go outside the rules?
They're responsible because the law has always been that an employer is responsible for the acts of its employees if the employee is doing something as part of the job. Now, what the Court of Appeal has decided this morning is that an assault on the pitch following a scrum is actually part of the game, which I think is a terribly dangerous decision, but that's why Redruth have been found to be responsible.
Do you anticipate all sorts of chaos after this? With sporting clubs closing down, or are we perhaps, getting a little bit overexcited about it?
Yeah, I don't think the floodgates will open because whenever a football player or a rugby player goes onto a pitch, they are expecting and consenting to contact and to some foul play. What they're not consenting to is an assault to have bones broken, and it's only in those circumstances where a court will become involved, and then we get into this issue of whether the rugby club, as an employer, is responsible.
Right, well, interesting stuff. See what happens. Peter Cole, thank you very much.